Shana Tova, everyone. May this be a sweet year full of peace, happiness, health, and prosperity for all of us. To answer Rabbi Mass's question, what is a synagogue? Well, it's a few things. In Hebrew, a synagogue is called a Beit Knesset, or house of assembly. But it also serves as a Beit Tfilah, a house of prayer, and a Beit Midrash, or house of study. These three pillars combine to form what we understand the synagogue to be today. We assemble or congregate together in order to pray and study, celebrate, and come together as Jews wherever we are around the world. Synagogues sustain congregations, and congregations sustain synagogues. Both are dependent on the other. So here we are, not at 561 Wellington Crescent, like we have been for decades, but in a temporary space, which nevertheless serves as our synagogue. It's certainly different. It has its charms, and no doubt its challenges. But the core aspect of the synagogue remains the same regardless. Here we are, congregating, praying, and learning about Judaism together, just as we as a Jewish nation have done for over 3 millennia and counting. And you know, historically speaking, what is happening at Shaarei Tzedek with the renovation of our physical building on Wellington Crescent and temporary relocation to Temple Shalom and the Asper Jewish Community Campus, both of which to whom we're very grateful for their accommodation and hospitality. It's really the norm in Jewish history. In fact, all synagogues around the world are essentially temporary spaces that serve as holy places for the Jewish people. And yes, temporary. With the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem by the Babylonians in 586 BCE, it took 70 years until the second temple was built. And even by that time, many Jews had been exiled to Babylon and other areas in the Middle East, and had to congregate, worship, and learn together in temporary synagogues in lieu of a temple. With the destruction of the second temple, we Jews had to, once again, rely on the idea of a synagogue to keep our identity and faith intact, regardless of where we ended up around the globe. And it is an article of our faith that we believe that the coming of the Messiah will bring with it the third and everlasting temple in Jerusalem. But until that day, we rely on our synagogues to be our temporary holy spaces where we can forge our identity and practice our Jewish faith from generation to generation. But why were the temples destroyed in the first place, leading us to establish synagogues? Our sages teach us that the destruction of both temples was the result of Jews not living up to the principle of acting with chesed, or loving kindness, towards one another, which is the one ingredient that binds together the Jewish people as a nation and not merely a group of individuals sharing a common heritage. In fact, Judaism pioneered the notion of sustaining community through tzedakah, which is often translated as charity, but this definition is a bit misleading. Tzedakah really implies charity with chesed, or a deliberate loving kindness intended to benefit both the recipient as well as the giver for the good of the community. And it is on tzedakah that synagogues find their lifeblood. Written throughout both the Babylonian and Jerusalem Talmuds, the importance of tzedakah is often repeated, going so far as to proclaim that the giving of tzedakah is equal to all the other commandments combined. But how is that possible? There are 613 commandments in the Torah, and we're supposed to believe that the fulfillment of one of them amounts to the fulfillment of all of them? How can we justify this? And quite simply, it's because tzedakah is an expression of selflessness, and selflessness is an act of sacrifice and service on behalf of others. While we no longer practice sacrifice in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, instead we offer prayer, good deeds, and the giving of tzedakah to merit God's blessings. Maimonides teaches that giving tzedakah with joy and graciousness is an act of sacrifice, because to do so, one must forgo something that is otherwise important to them. Instead of pursuing ever more physical comforts, higher standards of living or quality of life, the giving of tzedakah requires that the giver forego some of those luxuries in a selfless act to benefit the community as a whole. And this is what has sustained the Jewish people for millennia. Kol Yisrael arevim zeh lezeh. The whole nation of Israel is responsible one for the other. And together we go from strength to strength, year after year, and God willing, this year will be no different. So Shana Tova Metuka to everyone, and thank you all for being here.